He couldn't look me in the face. He knew what he had just done to me, and he knew how much it hurt me. But how could he not do it? My best friend since the 3rd grade, the best man at my wedding, Brandon, knew me inside out. To make it easier for him, I said, "Relax, buddy, we're not tipping off the press anymore." "Are you sure she didn't see you?" "I don't think she saw me, but am I sure?" "No, I can't say I'm sure. I saw her as soon as I walked in the door and turned to approach her. And when I saw her kissing that guy, I turned and found a dark corner to sit in. If she did see me, she didn't show it. My best friend had just told me that my wife was cheating on me. He called me at work and asked to meet him for a drink after work. As soon as I saw his face, I understood that something was bothering him, and I knew Brandon well enough to realize that it wouldn't do me any good if I started questioning him about it right away. He was torturing himself until he could say it. All I could do was wait. It took about 5 minutes of casual conversation and sipping beer before he finally got to the point. "Rob, I'm damn sorry that I'm the one telling you this, but Barb is cheating on you." I wanted to jump up and shout at him, No, damn it, you're wrong." But I knew it wasn't the case. He had known Barb as long as I had, so he was unlikely to mistake someone else for her. I asked him where he found out, and he told me this story. He went on a blind date as a favor to his sister, and, unsurprisingly, at least for him, the date turned into a disaster. He dropped the girl off at her apartment and decided he needed a stronger drink. He was in an unfamiliar part of town, so he decided to go into the first bar he found. He walked in the door of the establishment and saw Barb, leaving the dance floor with some guy. They approached a booth along the wall, and just before sitting down, he saw Barb passionately kiss the guy. Surprised, he found a place to sit and watch, and for the next hour, he watched Barb and the guy drink, dance, and kiss in the booth. When they danced, they pressed against each other, and the guy's hands were all over her. When they got up to leave, he gave them a minute, and then he got up and followed them out of the bar. He saw them get into the back seat of a car, and a minute later, Barb's head disappeared from view, and the guy leaned back against the seat. Brandon didn't try to get close enough to peek into the car, but he was sure that Barb was giving the guy oral sex. In about 3 minutes, her head lifted and they shifted. Then Barb disappeared from view again, and a few seconds later, her legs went up in the air. At this point, he pulled out of the parking lot and headed home. He had been holding onto what he knew for 2 weeks, not wanting to tell me until he couldn't hold back anymore. On the way home, I thought about that night when, according to Brandon's words, it happened. I remembered I was in Baltimore, dealing with a production issue. I called Barb around noon to talk to her, and she told me that after work, she was going out with the girls for drinks, so I shouldn't worry if I called and she didn't answer. I became curious if she did this every time, considering what Brandon had seen when I was leaving town. If that was the case, she must have done it at least twice a month. It just didn't make sense to me. I saw absolutely nothing in Barb's behavior towards me that indicated dissatisfaction or loss of affection. We had been married for 10 years, and I thought it was a good marriage, but evidently, I was wrong. One thing I knew for sure, I was going to find out. The first thing I needed to do was to figure out what was going on. I couldn't tell Barb about what Brandon had seen, as it would inevitably lead to an argument filled with accusations like, "I'm your wife. Who the hell are you going to believe, him or me?" To be honest, I was leaning toward believing Brandon. He had no reason to lie to me, unlike Barb. If for some strange reason, Brandon were lying, it would be relatively easy to uncover. I would give Barb more rope to hang herself, and if she didn't, I would scrutinize Brandon more closely. I had to schedule an inspection trip to our plant in Enniston, but I changed the arrangement so that Gary could make the trip instead. I arranged with my boss for him to take a week off and explained the reasons for him to be available for any calls Barb might make to the office. Then, I set out with Gary's assistance. I knew he would help me because he had just gone through a nasty divorce after catching his wife in bed with another man. I explained the situation to him, and he said he would be glad to assist. I bought a disposable phone at a convenience store, and the only name I used to register it was Gary's. Monday morning, I kissed Barb goodbye, telling her I'd call her as soon as I checked into the hotel. I said I'd see her by 4 o'clock and headed to the airport. I left my car in long-term parking at the airport and then went to Alamo to rent a mid-size sedan. After that, I found myself a room at a motel for 3 nights. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Gary called and told me he had checked into room 416 at the hotel under my name. I parked a little down the street from where Barb worked when she finished her shift that evening, and I followed her home. She headed straight for the house. I gave her an hour, and then I called her on my regular cell phone and told her where I was staying. If you call me and a strange man answers, don't hang up. There was an issue with our reservation in the city, and there were very few rooms available, so Gary Williams and I are sharing a room. I'll get in touch with you tomorrow. Love you, sweetheart, for now. I sat in the courtyard until around 10 or 15 past, and when she still hadn't left the house by that time, I headed back to my motel. I called her around noon the next day and reminded her that Wednesday was trash collection day, so she should remember to put the trash cans out by the curb. Tonight, I'm having dinner with the CEO and production managers, so if it gets late, I might not call you and disturb you. If you don't hear from me by 9, don't wait. I love you too. Bye for now. That night, I followed her again, and she went straight home and didn't go out anymore. I began to question whether I had jumped to conclusions when I thought she was using my out-of-town trips as an opportunity to cheat on me. I only had one more night before I was supposed to return home, and she stayed home every night I observed. I didn't call her during lunch the next day, and around 5 in the afternoon, Gary called me and said that Barb had left a message for me at the hotel front desk. I used the disposable phone to find out what she wanted. I just wanted to let you know that tonight after work, I'll be staying with the girls, and it might get late. I didn't want you to worry if you call and don't get an answer. Be careful, darling. Take a taxi home if you drink too much. I'll be home, and we can pick up your car. That's why I love you, baby, for always thinking about me and my well-being. I love you. I love you too. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. When she came home from work, I followed her. She drove to the other end of town and stopped at the same bar where Brandon had seen her. I had never been to that bar and didn't know its location, so I didn't want Barb to know I was following her. I parked my car nearby where I could keep an eye on her without being noticed. I knew several of the girls Barb worked with, and as I watched the entrance, I didn't see any of them arrive. After dark, Barb came out, got into her car, and started it. I prepared to follow her, but all she did was drive the car to the back of the parking lot and parked it in the darkest corner. She turned off the lights and just sat there. After about 5 minutes, 2 guys came out, walked over to the car, and stood there talking for a few minutes. Then one of the men got into the car and drove away. The other man stood there for a moment, watching until the car disappeared from sight. Then he turned and headed to the far end of the parking lot, where Barb's car was parked. They met each other and started kissing. After about 5 minutes of embracing, both of them got out of the car, and I expected to see them return to the bar, but what they did instead was get into the back seat of Barb's car. I know it sounds foolish, but up until that moment, I had been telling myself that Brandon had misunderstood everything. That Barb loved me and wouldn't cheat on me. I was convinced that there must be a reasonable explanation for it all, but the fact that she deliberately got into the back seat pushed denial right out of my head and heart. They began kissing again, and Barb slowly slid down until I could no longer see her. I saw the man looking down at her, and even though I already knew everything I needed to know, there was this perverse need in me to actually witness what Barb was doing. Just knowing that Barb was having sex with this guy wasn't enough. I had to see it. I got out of my car and walked towards Barb's car, trying to stay in a way that the man wouldn't notice me approaching. As I got closer, I could hear Barb moaning. I positioned myself to get a view of what was happening inside the car. Barb was naked from the waist down. Hurry up, baby. I need something real. That's it, baby, Barb moaned. Take me hard. Another minute or so of smack, 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 of flesh hitting flesh, and Barb screamed. Oh my God, oh my God, oh, shit, you're so good, baby, so good. The guy groaned softly, then uttered his first words since I'd gotten there to watch. My turn, he said. Now it's my turn. Not in me, Barb screamed in panic. You promised. And as soon as they wanted to do it again, I started clapping my hands and shouting, bravo, bravo, great performance. Wonderful first act. Barb raised her head, saw me, and her face lost all its color. I had heard about faces turning pale, but it was the first time I had seen it. Great show, folks. I'd love to stay for the second act, but I have some urgent personal matters to attend to. Barb was trying to get out from under the man as I turned and walked back to my rental car. I was just pulling away from my parking spot when Barb finally managed to get out of her car and rushed toward me. She asked me to wait, and I hit the brakes. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed back to the motel. The next morning, I went to the airport, returned the rental car, and picked up mine from long-term parking. I stopped by the office, and Marcia, our receptionist, told me that Barb had called a half-dozen times and said it was crucial for me to call her at work as soon as I received her messages. I thanked her, went into my office, called the company lawyer, and asked him to recommend a good divorce attorney, then dialed the number he provided. Fortunately, the attorney was able to see me the same day, and we scheduled a meeting. Afterward, I did everything I believed I needed to do to cover my backside. I canceled all our joint credit cards, placed a legal notice in local newspapers stating that I was no longer responsible for any debts incurred by Barbara Ann Mercer, formerly Barnum. I went to the bank, withdrew half the checks and savings, and removed my name from all accounts, leaving them solely in Barb's name. That day, I received some bad news. We had an impeccable marriage, so everything was divided equally. It didn't matter to me, so I told him to proceed and file the paperwork. He informed me he could file the petition the next day, and I inquired about a restraining order to keep Barb away from me in the house. He said that obtaining a restraining court order is challenging without very compelling reasons, so I lied. I told him that Barb and her lover had threatened to kill me when I caught them, and I feared they might try to murder me to claim the insurance on my life. All right, he said, such a threat might expedite the process, but you'll need to prove it when we have the hearing. Otherwise, it will be dismissed. Fine. As soon as I move out of the house, I'll drop it, and we won't even have to go through the hearing. How soon can we do that? I can be at the courthouse when it opens, and if you're willing to spend $200 to expedite it, she'll be served the papers by 3 p.m. Okay, do it. I arranged for him to call me as soon as Barb was served, then returned to the office. Marcia was gone for the day, but she left 7 messages on my desk, all from Barb, and all urgently requesting that I call her. I crumpled them up and tossed them in the trash, then sat at my desk and began browsing listings for apartments closer to work. I spent most of the next morning visiting apartments I had shortlisted and, by midday, signed a lease for one of them. At 3:10, I received a call informing me that Barb had been served. I rented a truck, bought a few packing boxes, and headed to the house. At 4, the process server who had served Barb arrived and handed me a copy of the restraining order. It stated that Barb couldn't come within 500 feet of me. A couple of my friends helped me, and by 5:15, I had taken out everything I wanted from the house, except my clothes, and loaded it into the truck. I was busy loading when Barb pulled into the driveway. She got out of her car and approached me, and I shouted at her to get back into her car and stay away from the house until I called the police for violating the restraining order. This is foolish, Rob. We need to talk. No, we won't talk. Actions speak louder than words, and I saw you in action. Now leave. No, we won't talk until we do. Fine, Barb, I gave you a chance. I took out my cell phone and activated the preset to call the police, then entered the house and locked the door. Barb was pounding on the door, demanding to be let in when a police car pulled up to the curb. I went outside and handed them my copy of the restraining order. They read it, and then told Barb she needed to stay at least 500 feet away from the house. She protested, claiming it was her home too and she had just as much right to be there as I did. Eventually, the officer ordered her to leave, or else he would take her to the station. I stood there, hoping she would continue to argue with him and he would escort her away, but Barb had a sudden bout of wisdom. She got into her car and drove to the end of the block. I thanked the officer for his prompt response and then continued loading the truck and left the house. After making sure Barb wasn't trying to follow me, I headed to my new apartment and began settling in. I spent the weekend getting comfortable, and then on Monday, I returned to work. I had only been at my desk for 2 minutes when Marcia poked her head into my office and said Barb was on the line. I really didn't want to talk to her, but I had been unfair to Marcia, making her handle all the calls and putting off the conversation with Barb, so I picked up the receiver. Hello? Robbie, please, talk to me. I have nothing to say to you, Barb, but I need to talk to you. Go ahead, I'm listening. I can't do this over the phone. Rob, people keep coming into the office. Come back home, Rob. Please, just come back home. I'll make dinner and we can sit down and talk. No, thanks. I don't have a home, and I don't see a reason to return to you. Okay. Pick a place, and I'll meet you there, but please, Rob, I need to talk to you. I really don't want to talk because it would be a waste of my time, but you can drop by my office when you're done with work. By then, everyone should have left. I'll give you 15 minutes and that's it. She arrived just before 10:06. When she entered my office, I pointed to the chair and said, "All right, Barb, what do you want?" "This is what I don't want, Rob. I don't want a divorce. I didn't want a wife who picks up guys in bars and sleeps with them in the back seats of parking lots, but here I am. I'm sorry you saw that, Rob, but even so, it shouldn't be the reason for our divorce. You can't be serious. You're sleeping with other men, and I'm supposed to be okay with that? These aren't other men, Rob. There's only one. I've been seeing Jeff before I met you. I ran into him on one of my nights out with the girls from work. I've been dating him for about 3 months. What? You knew him before you met me, and that makes it all right? Rob, I've been dating him for about 3 months. Have you noticed any lack of attachment to you during this period? Have I been less loving than throughout our whole marriage? I love you, Rob, and I don't love Jeff. My seeing Jeff didn't cost you anything, Rob. Absolutely nothing. I only see him when you're out of town. I've never come to you after being with him. Then, I guess, everything is okay. I'm trying to convey to you that my meeting with Jeff hasn't harmed us at all. I don't disrespect you by coming to you right after seeing Jeff. I don't sneak behind your back to see him when you're at home. The point, Rob, is that you're my man. I love you, dear, and you're the only one I want to grow old with. Sorry, Barb, but I see things differently than you do. You say you respect me, but I say you showed me the utmost disrespect when you cheated on me with another man. I can't come to terms with that. I can't equate your statements about loving me, wanting to grow old with me, and me being your man with the fact that you're having sex with some other guy. It just doesn't add up. If I truly were your man, you wouldn't be sleeping with Jeff at all. And I won't buy that you're having sex with Jeff just because you dated him before you met me. If that were the case, I'd have to accept that sooner or later, you'd sleep with half a dozen other guys you had sex with before you met me. Oh, Rob, I would never do that to you. You're already doing it with Jeff. Rob, I slept with Jeff because he's an amazing lover. Oh, really? I guess that explains everything and makes it all right. Listen, honey, I love you and I never wanted to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you now, but I have to be honest here if I want any chance of saving our marriage. I'm sleeping with Jeff because he gives me something I don't have with you. You're a wonderful man, fantastic in every way except one. You're terrible in bed. You're sweet and affectionate, but it seems like you couldn't care less about sex. It's like clockwork on Tuesdays and Saturdays, dull sex, like routine, once, and then you just roll over and fall asleep. I need something more. When I ran into Jeff during my night out with the girls, I remembered how we used to sleep together 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times a night. I wondered if he could still do that, and when he started hitting on me, I went to a motel with him. It was just sex, Rob. There was no love or attachment, just plain, rough sex. He gave me something that you didn't have. It was just sex, Rob. It didn't diminish my love for you one bit. If I had to choose between you and no sex life, or Jeff and great sex, I chose you, Rob. Oh, Barb, I'm so glad to hear that. Let me ask you something. When I came home from work and you didn't feel like cooking, and you said, "Can we go out to eat somewhere?" Did I take you out somewhere? Yes, you did. When you came to me and said you had a tough week and wanted to go somewhere to have fun and blow off some steam, did I take you somewhere? Yes, Rob, you did. Actually, didn't I usually do what you asked for? Almost always. Then why on earth didn't you tell me? For heaven's sake, Rob, my sex life sucks, and then ask me to do something about it. You never complained, so how was I supposed to know? My sex drive isn't that strong, and on Tuesdays and Saturdays, it was all fine with me, and you went along with it. If I fed you hot dogs every night for a week, and you got tired of eating hot dogs, would you tell me? You'd want to have sex with anyone you like, but talking to me about something as important as your sex life? Oh no, I can't do that. I'll just go have sex with some other guy. At least it's nice to know that if you had a choice, you'd choose me over Jeff. But you don't have a choice, Barb, and I do. And since I have to choose between living with a cheating slut or divorcing her, I choose divorce. I gave you a chance to talk, and now it's over between us. Please, don't bother me anymore. Anything else you need to say, you can communicate through my lawyer. Please, just go. Rob, please, don't do this. I love you, baby. I really love you. Go, Barb, just go. Tears streamed down her face, but she stood up and left without saying another word. The divorce was finalized last week, and I haven't seen Barb or talked to her in the past 6 months. I miss her, I really do. I still love her and believe I always will. If I had just started my car and left when I saw her getting into the backseat of her car with Jeff, and then told her about it when she came home, maybe we could have worked everything out. But I didn't leave, and there's no way I could have stayed with her after witnessing what she did in the backseat.